my experience of being devoted to a human guru feels like a way through to oneness. It feels like that for me.
Yes.
So one of the things that I'm kind of coming to an understanding, and I wondered if you could talk a little more about this, is that how the imagination brings us to reality. I mean, the imagination actually brings us to a true state.
Yeah, well, yes. In other words, imagination, in the way that I'm using it, is not the same as fantasy. So it's what I'm saying is some people technically they call it the imageal mind because they want to make that distinction really clear. And so the mind that generates images and creates feelings through images, rather than calling it imagination because that word's so tainted. But the imageal mind, using it, is what we do all the time. There isn't any reality without the imageal mind for human beings. It's what makes humans humans. It's what makes poetry possible. It's what makes theater possible. It's what makes novels possible. It's what makes storytelling possible. It's all imagination. It doesn't mean that you're consciously telling a tall tale. Even when you're trying to be as clear and straight as you can, it's through the use of imagination that you're doing that. And that's what I suggest. In other words, the imagination becomes more and more purified, more and more clear. It's not separate from discrimination.
Oh.
You see, you can be discriminating, you can be clear, and you recognize that your love and devotion for this particular person is filled with imagination, just like the relationship with everybody you know. It's not just that, it's what we live in, it's what we breathe in, it's a subjective thing. Yeah, good, all right, good. See, this is the tricky thing about this is that dual mind thing, objective and subjective. The way I talk about it is it's like two separate things. The fact of the matter is that nobody's living outside of subjective mind. But there's a pretense in this culture, in the modern 21st century, that we are living in the objective reality. They explain away everything. Explains away love. Love isn't real. It's this chemical, this thing, and that. But if you check with the scientists who are doing that, and you ask them if they love their wives, different story. Yes, I do. Well, don't you know it's just chemistry? Yes, it is. And they might get really heady and say, yes, it is, and it's this and that. And if they talk that way next to their wife, they do not get any tonight. It ain't working for us as humans. You need that subjective. That's literally, there was one author, if you want to look into it, but he's pretty hard to read, but Henry Corbin, he goes into this big time, how the death of the person is what's happening in the 21st century, or in the 20th century. As persons, because we understand objective reality, we're damning the very qualities that make us persons. That human. We're fixated on being objective, but we're not really objective. And we don't have to be, there's no advantage to being purely objective. There's lots of advantage to having access to objective reality, and that's great. That's why, like, when I go to the doctor, I might go to the witch doctor later, but I go to the guy who does the MRIs first, right? Because he can objectively look at me and see things, but he treats me like an object, and that's what we need sometimes. To be treated like an object, right? But that's not all I want. After I'm done with the MRI, I want to go home and be treated like a subject, like a person, even though it's not objectively real. I would give it in my heart. There's never really a time when they're separate anyway. So discrimination and clarity and all of that goes hand in hand with imagination. It's not about trying to fool yourself. The imagination is a bad name. It's not about trying to fool yourself. That's what I mean by idols and icons. Because there are people who fool themselves, right? So this is where devotion isn't necessarily good. Or let's say it's a lower, spectral dynamics, it's a lower tier, right? Where you're worshiping your God. And other people's gods are not real. And I got my God. And everything is literal and solid. You're treating it like it's solid. You're treating it like it's not imagination. You're still imagining, but you act like it's not imagination. You don't know what it is that you're doing. But but once you become awakened to non-duality, you say, awakened to non-dual states, you can begin to be in devotion in a way that is in devotion with only this. Does that make more sense too, Chesney?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. And by the way, please, by all means, share your stories of if you feel to. This is great, but if you feel to, share your own experiences of devotion if you're up for it. And that was really there too.
So this is great, Krishna. So I was raised in the Christian church, and devotion was huge. Devotion was huge for me. And it was really through my devotional relationship with the divine that led me out of the church in a way. And with that, there was this feeling of like being forsaken by the divine too. It's almost like God turned his back on me in a way.
Right.
So there was a way in which I had to just leave that relationship.
Yes.
It still felt like it was present in me.
Yes.
But it was going through a reworking. It was being I don't know how to really describe it more than that, but
Makes a lot of sense to me.
okay. And more since my second birth, that devotional aspect of myself has come online more and more, and it feels like it's been key for transitions that I've made.
Yes.
Like it's been necessary. Like the transition wouldn't have happened for me if I didn't have a devotional, like there was a devotional upwelling that led to an opening or something.
Yes. I think that's a soul nature issue too. I think there are certain people for whom that is necessary for them to be in devotion, for them to go to the next thing. There's something in them that's what they need for the next level. I know that's true for me in some ways.
Yeah, okay, thanks. What was I going to say?
Take your time.
Well, I'll throw out a question that I had thought of, and that was, in my experience in the church, and if we think of Jesus, his life as not just being myth. I mean, I'm fine with it being just myth, but I'm also fine with it not being myth. And
Yeah, by the way, I use myth in a very respectful way.
right, yeah.
I don't mean mere myth.
Yeah.
I mean it's a sacred story that works. It can be true or not true, but it works either way. That's what I mean by myth.
Yeah.
It's a sacred story that works.
Yeah. There's something about, for me, I feel like that relationship that he had with the Father was the source of his power. Like there's a dimension of miracles or manifestation or something that opens up through that devotional relationship. And I'm wondering if you have felt that, or
Definitely.
I feel that very strongly. Like it's the power is connected to the devotion. It's necessary. So I'll stop there for a second.
Yeah, right on. Definitely. I hear you. That's how it is for me. And it's, I don't know that it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
But when I turn to it, it flows. So, why wouldn't I? It's like sort of like there's this huge fountain that just pours when I turn toward it. Or I can wait for the rain. It's like, it's like, yeah.
So I just remember the other thing I was going to say is that when I pray now, or when I worship, because I was very, music has been a big part of my life. So when I sing or worship, it very much feels like I'm worshiping, like it's flowing out of me and onto me, like I'm worshiping myself. I'm praying to myself, but it's bigger than me. So I definitely relate to that. That it's all the same.
Yeah. You have to let yourself go a little out of your mind to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not possible to hold that paradox with your rational mind. I mean, but it becomes blatant. It just becomes glaringly obvious in the midst of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the longing, the yearning for the divine or whatever is like, it's just so good.
It's so good.
It's so good. You just want to
so
surrender
good.
to that and just let it flow out of you.
Yeah. Talk about sex.
Yeah. Baby.
Yeah. I mean, there was a little bit that's kind of interesting in the again, Christian language here. There's this thing that everybody, I remember, so earlier in my life I was, I was a born-again Christian from the time I was 14 till I was 18. Then I got involved in Tibetan Buddhism, but in between there, I kind of renounced the whole thing. Well, it's bullshit. First I felt like I was backslidden. Then I felt like, no, I'm not backslidden, it's all nonsense. And then I ended up rediscovering what was useful in it and because I remembered certain things that happened when I was a Christian having to do with praying for things and then huge synchronicities, like how in the world, but back then it was like obvious that Jesus was following me around doing stuff for me, and then I looked at it and, actually what happened is I no longer could be celibate. That's basically what happened. And I went, oh well, and so I guess I'm not a good Christian anymore. Then after a while I was like, none of this stuff is historically true, none of it's literally true, so it's all nonsense. But I always remembered, God damn, it was weird. It might be all nonsense, but somebody was following me around doing stuff for me, or it looked that way. It was really weird. And then I went, well, maybe it was just imagination. Then I did LSD, and somebody kept following me around doing stuff for me while I was doing LSD. And I went, wow, wait a minute. And then I read Eastern philosophy and found out that some people thought Krishna was following around doing things for them, and some people thought Shiva was following them around doing things for them. And I went, oh, okay, so it really is something when somebody follows you around and does stuff for you. So you can go into a certain state or become aware of synchronicities, honor synchronicities, which is what I did as a Christian. And then they keep happening. It's like you tune into a place where you're actually, this has happened all the time. I mean, almost everybody I talk to, it's sort of like you're having this deep conversation about marshmallows, and then you go to the restaurant an hour later and you're having your cup of tea, and somebody at the table behind you says, oh yes, and what about those marshmallows? What? And if you talk to her, she would say, oh, not that, I mean this. Like something like, but still it's weird. And then you walk out the door and somebody else does it, and you turn on the radio, the commercials about marshmallows. It's like, what is going on here? So everything is pointing to the oneness. I mean, in other words, this is the kind of stuff that people get schizophrenic about. It's kind of like, well, maybe they put something in my brain, or or the Martians are telling me this, or something. They wear tinfoil hats and all that. The thing is that it's all one. It's only, and the evidence is starting. You're starting to. It's like it's like you're seeing behind the curtain, and you go, oh, I can't. Oh, well, never mind. It's like put it back. You're starting to get that it's all one thing, and that it's your mind that keeps it separate. And when your mind stops doing that, it becomes really all one thing, because you came out of who knows where. And everything started coming online, and it was all one thing, and then people said, no, it's separate. I'm your mom, and this is your dad, and this is your thing. You never thought, so you start to have relationships with mom and dad, and then you never thought to have a relationship with the whole thing. But it's all one thing. So when that one thing wants to tap on your shoulder, it starts giving you these little clues. In the old Jewish tradition, early Genesis, these things used to be called messengers. Messengers came. And the word messenger is the word angel. That's the word we get the word angel from. So there's messages. There's messengers come. If you read in the Torah, if you read the Genesis, it's not a guy with wings yet. That developed later. It was just a regular guy riding in the desert having a meal with Abraham. And he said some things, and Abraham went, aha. And Sarah went, aha. It's like when somebody says something and you go, aha. That's your messenger. That's your angel in that moment. I mean, it's not that if you go after the woman in the restaurant, she's going to say, oh yes, I'm your angel. Or, yes, I'm talking about you. But it's the God or the onlyness that's underneath all of it that is speaking to you through her. And always speaking to you through everybody.
Through the phenomena.
Through the phenomena.
It just keeps popping
It's
up.
God is talking to you if you can hear it. And it's not separate from you, because the God is speaking through your own thoughts and your own feelings too.
Yeah.
This is the thing. It's not that your own internal stuff is separate from the outside stuff. It's all one thing. That's what we end up. That's why when you have the thought about marshmallows, you don't even talk about it with your friend. You just have the thought about it, and it happens. That's really weird. I was just thinking about that, and now she's saying it. And now it's on the radio. How come? Because you're dropping, something's happening. And you could say, you could develop a relationship with that. Like, I'm paying attention to that. Or you could say it's all one and be impersonal about it. Either one. But this thing of developing a relationship with it, very useful. Because we live in a world where we develop relationships with other human beings, and it's very comforting. We don't feel alone. And human beings are not more intelligent than the intelligence that is living everything. That intelligence is more. Human beings are not more intelligent than the intelligence that is living everything.
Right.
So you can be in a relationship with that one who's more intelligent. She is more intelligent than any of your friends. Right? So there's this thing you were talking about with gurus. I wanted to get back to that for a second. And how I know with myself, it was a hard lesson. Because I kept feeling like I kept fucking up. Like I went with this teacher and it was no good. And I went with that teacher and it was no good. And suddenly I realized that every time I did that, I was cutting off my nose despite my face. Because I was telling myself my intuition isn't good. So I trusted myself less the next time. So then I began saying, no, I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to trust that that was exactly what I needed. That spirit led me through that because I needed it. And the next time it's going to be even more clear, the next time more clear, the next time more clear. And that really works way better. There's a verse in the Bible that's, I think, is really misunderstood. This thing that Jesus says that scared the shit out of so many people. He said, you can blaspheme against God the Father and you'll be forgiven. You can blaspheme the Son, me, and be forgiven. But you can't blaspheme the Holy Spirit. And you can't get forgiven if you do that. So now I understand that to mean you can't discount that guidance because you'll be lost. How can you be forgiven? You're going to be alone in the desert. You don't trust yourself. You don't trust that internal voice. If you don't trust that you're being guided, then you're lost. So you have a choice. You can be lost or you can be found. You trust your internal voice, and the more you trust that, the clearer it is. The more you pay attention to your own impulses and being, the more you trust yourself, the more you trust the Holy Spirit, the more it can guide you. You don't trust that, you're lost. And you can forget about every other concept, you can disagree with every guru you've ever had, you can blaspheme your last guru, you can blaspheme all the gurus, you'll always be forgiven. But if you blaspheme that guidance that brought you to all those gurus, then you won't know where to go from here. Make sense? Okay.
That's great.
Is that okay? Yeah. Yes.
I would like to share a devotional experience that I have a lot because I paint, and when I go into my studio, the brushes are there, the mess is there, and I put on Pearl Jam extremely loud, and I start painting. And, the painting gets created, and there comes a state where, I just start doing stuff, and the painting starts determining what I do, Like, because I've put something down, it says, then I go further, and no, I got to do this, and no, that colour doesn't work. And it determines itself. Dawn and I were talking about this today, but, and then all the work's there in the exhibition, and it's like, shit, where did that come from? And they say, wow, you painted that? And you're going, well, yeah. And you really get this feeling, where did that come from? That's kind of strange. But if I told the gallery, that, this music basically originated from Pearl Jam, or that it had this sort of like real, extremely devotional quality, or something extremely sacred, it doesn't kind of fit in that world, so I don't mention it. Better if I don't mention it, or it's better if I sign the paintings, actually, and really are mine. But, that's for me, an extremely sacred thing,
Here it is.
Wow.
Thank you so much. That's really, I actually feel like the most natural devotees are often artists, because they are channels for this higher intelligence to be creative.
Yeah.
So the source of our bodies, of the universe itself, once again creates through you, manifests through you.
Yeah, I find extremely strong parallels, actually, to the waking down process.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't get down with your bad self, you're not, what's it going to be about? It's just going to be a picture of you. You've got to go way further than that until you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like crazy.
Well, this is beautiful. This is the piece that is hand in hand with devotion, is this kind of restructuring of the ego. You could say destruction of the ego, or humbling of the ego, or becoming an instrument for the impulses of being, or the Holy Spirit, or the divinity itself, or Shakti-ma, or Shiva, or anything, whatever language. But it's, you become an instrument, and that kind of breaks down. The more you do it, the more humbling it is. And in order to do it, you have to some degree get out of your way.
Yeah. But I do see that, we've changed so much. I mean, like, whether it was Jackson Pollock or Hendrix, when the ego is hung on it, wow, this is me, it's like, wow, that's too much. Mm-hmm. I mean, if these paintings were all, I did all that, I'd be screwed, I couldn't do it. It would just be too much. Wow. It would just be too much,
Do you have a name? What do you say did it?
Yeah, I'm really.
No need to box
I
it
don't
in.
want to name it.
Good, no problem.
I can't.
No
As soon, if I start naming it or put a, it's
Mm-hmm.
there. It's just latent.
There you are.
It's just latent,
That's beautiful. I mean, ultimately, all names have to give way to that nameless one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's she.
Ah,
So,
there you go. So
okay.
you made it she. So there is a name. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the Sufis are really clear about this. This is, they're like, has 1,000 names, but is nameless.
Yeah.
Must be nameless.
Yeah.
Any name is a limit. Any name is a means for the ego to say, now I know what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's so mysterious.
It's very mysterious.
You can't mess with it.
No.
You can't mess with it or hang anything on it. It's just.
There it is. Beautiful.
Mm.
Beautiful. And that's actually, and by way of talking about imagery and metal and paper, and even your painting, these are icons, and they become idols as soon as it's like, this is it.
Yeah.
It's the source of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the names, any name we give is an icon. It has to be transparent. Otherwise, it becomes an idol. So
Yeah.
it's always a mystery. It's always mystery. That's why the Jews used to do G-D, because you can't even say the name. That's what it means. How holy be is your name? Because they used to not be able to pronounce the word. They weren't allowed to say God's name. So
Well,
much so.
I understand that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but there it is. You can't say
Yeah.
it. So can you give the mic to Don?
Yeah.
Thanks. Don, can you speak about this, please?
Oh, well, yeah, I'm relating,
Andrew, thank you so much for that. And Don, yes.
yeah, I was noticing in listening to Andrew talk about that and talking about it earlier today, there is this place where every time I set out to produce a sculpture, it's just as hard every time. I have to set up the ritual of I'm going to gather these things, I'm going to start this way, as if I know where I'm going, but I never will go there. It always proceeds in a different direction, and halfway through I always think it's going to completely fail, and maybe I should just burn it right now. So the ritual includes, no, you have to finish it, and then you can burn it if you decide then. And it's just this amazing vector that proceeds. I know it's going to come. There's going to be that place where it's failed, it's done, I'm over with, But then I finish it and people respond to it, Okay, I guess it works. And even then, I'm not sure when it's done. These are abstracts, So how do you know when an abstract is done? It doesn't have a known form. It's not trying to reproduce anything. And so it's a complete sacred ritual. And I have to go into the cauldron and go in blind, and somewhere I'm going to come out. I have to have that faith that I'll come out the other side. And then there it is, Okay, I'll put it out here, see if anybody likes it. Yeah, so it's very much that same devotional process.
And
prostration.
Right. And it's pretty ecstatic.
Yeah.
When you're in it, it's
Absolutely.
ecstatic. That's a payoff.
Yeah.
It's ecstatic.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Van, I think you want to talk about music, no?
I wasn't planning to exact, but creating, improvising, composing inspired music, seemingly channel, I did it and I didn't do it. Something bigger is coming through, following that thread in that mystery. It's very similar to visual arts. I had a question about praying for things, manifestation.
Yeah.
Where you're invoking some sort of magical force,
Right.
And there are different levels of that.
Different levels.
But I want to expand on it a little more. So I believe, as you said, some people by soul nature basically got wired up for devotion. And I am wired up for devotion. I have discrimination and devotion. And so my mysterious magic Supreme Other, I put the name, in form of Divine Mother, but in the broadest sense of the word. So my new term, I've shared this in various settings here, is Magic Ma. And it's that I call it paradoxical, where I pray to Magic Ma and I am her. So it's identity and relatedness. In the area of praying for things, from small things, from parking places to big things like job or relationship, and magic after that, it seems like manifestation is mysteriously, magically enhanced in some way by that prayer invoking. There's some force that seems greater than me just wishing for something or visualizing, New Age visualizing. So could you speak to that magic manifestation?
Yeah. So, yeah, sure. I think there's levels to this. I think there's, my experience is I pray most often in the day when I forget stuff. I just say, God, please show me where I put my shoes. I swear. And I find it all the time. I mean, really, it is weird. Yes, Vivian. Vivian, now when I can't find it, she goes, pray. Ask God. That's what it is. God, please show me where my pants You know, and I swear, it's like right away, it's really bizarre. So, I know that level. That's kind of a low level, you know. It's like, it's sort of like, I really feel as though, you know, in me, there's like these, you know, like, you know, talking about inner child, right? And there's like just a survival level, scared, you know, for my own livelihood, and, you know, my own survival. And then there's, you know, you could say higher centers in me. And devotion and my sense of, one way of saying it is my sense of what God is different depending on where it is. Because basically, at one level, you know, God is, you know, I don't know, like a housekeeper or something. When I ask for my pants or something, that's really, you know, the divine housekeeper. I mean, think about the job you're giving God when you ask for a parking space. I mean, it's pretty like, you know, it's like you can hire somebody for minimum wage now. But that's the level at which we sometimes have needs, you know? And so I don't feel like that's the fullest manifestation of God, but sometimes it helps in a pinch. So, yeah, yes. Yeah.
I wanted to speak for all the people who aren't overtly devotional through the emotional body, you know, or I don't know, the worshiping kind of attitude, because I feel like I lead a deeply devotional, creative life, and it's more the devotion arises out of where I turn my attention to regularly and consistently, and where the care that's in my heart arises. And for me, it's not in that level of the emotion, you know, it's in the level of that which flows and connects to all things, that which plumbs deeply into the intuition of the self itself. And I experience, you know, synchronicity, creativity, like amazing out.
I don't understand about emotion part.
What?
Emotion part, what do you mean?
Oh, well, the part...
About love, you mean?
Yeah, overtly, like, turning your attention to, and, you know, like you have your room full of your icons.
Right.
And actually, you know, really giving them attention and talking to them and all of that.
Right.
There's just another level of devotion. It's like, look where you're caring in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Look where you wait for inspiration, where you tune into your own being. That's also a level of incredible devotion.
Yeah, I don't think they're separable. In other words, you can't
No, I'm
do
not saying,
this one without doing that one also.
No, I'm not really saying they're separate, but, you know, we have this way of saying, well, that person's a devotional type, you know, and this person's a jnani, and this person's a server. You know, we have these different ways of dividing people up. So I just wanted to expand the idea of devotion.
Okay. Yeah, good. I mean, that's what I think of as generic devotion in Waking Down. And I think that's, like I said, when I started off. Yeah, I feel like everybody in Waking Down, you say the teachers in Waking Down all have that, regardless of whether you're a devotional type or not. In other words, there's a general form of devotion, which is listening to the prompts of being, and being in love with the work, and being in love with other people, and all of that. And that's...
Yeah, it's more broad.
Yeah, it's broad, yeah. But it's so taboo to talk about the more specific, archetypical, and the sense of the divine as divine other, that I wanted to bring that into the conversation too, and like kind of emphasize that, because in a way, you know, like I was saying the last few days, many people have approached me and say, well, I feel like everybody's devotional here already. And I think that's true. It's all devotion. So I would agree with you, and also say that there's room for attention to for people, because a lot of people come into the work and think, well, they don't talk about God and, and devotional stuff, so I guess that's not part of it. And it's not necessary, but it's also, it's also okay to do, so.